did becoming a father, did that change you at all as far as an artist goes? Did that maybe change the way that you do your music? Did it have any effect on your career whatsoever as a
Yeah.
recording artist?
I was always lyric conscious, if you will, but I think it did make me more lyric conscious. It's like, well, when I sing this song, my son's going to hear it. Is he going to try to live out what I'm saying? Is he going to try to emulate the lyrics that I sing in the song? I think it more or less reinforced the path that I was already on. Because my mother made me very conscious of lyrics, and she would always be like, "Does this song have value?" And again, I came from the church, so with gospel music and things like that, there's a huge lyric consciousness about singing songs of faith and inspiring people. And I was like, well, how do I do that? And people want me to be a sex symbol, and they want me to be all this other stuff, So it was balancing all of that was always important from the beginning. So I think in having a child, I just continued on that same path and just continued to build.
What's doing, everybody? I'm Alec Lace. Thank you for watching First Class Fatherhood. Today's guest on the podcast is Kenny Lattimore. Kenny Lattimore is a Grammy-nominated singer-songwriter. He has been crushing the R&B scene since the late 80s, early 90s. He's got a brand new album out right now called Here to Stay. The link to the album is down there in the description below. While you're down there, smack the subscribe button, tap the like, and let's jump into it right now with Kenny Lattimore on First Class Fatherhood. Joining me now, First Class Father, Kenny Lattimore. Welcome to First Class Fatherhood.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's great to be here.
All right, let's start just like this. How many kids do you have? How old?
I have an 18-year-old son that just was shipped off to college.
Wow, very cool. What kind of sports or activities was he into growing up?
Everything, man. He was a beast on the football field. He played basketball, and he really just was overall athletic. And but that's kind of like a genetic thing too. And I was loving sports because it allowed him to get that energy out. Young boys need that the space to get their energy out.
Yeah, I hear you. I got 3 boys myself and a girl, so I know a little bit about that. If you could hear, Kenny, please, for the listeners, just give us a little bit about your background and what you do.
Sure. I am, again, first a father. I absolutely love it. The whole idea of shaping a life and pointing it towards greatness is one of the greatest things ever. I'm a man of faith. I am a husband. My wife is a wonderful attorney, and she's a part of the television industry. And I also am an entertainer, so I sing and act and host different events and television shows, things like that. So, but most people know me for singing love songs.
Yeah, and listen, you've had a very successful career here, Kenny. So it's an honor to have you on the podcast. So take me back. You said 18. You said 18 years old now. So about how old were you when you first became a dad, and how did that experience kind of change your perspective on life?
Wow, I waited a long time. Well, for me, it was a long time. I was in my 30s, and it felt like I was more ready, though, because I had more patience. I think if I had had him younger, I would have still been figuring so much about me out. Figuring out certain aspects of life. But having a son in my 30s, I used to think to myself, oh, man, I'm not going to be able to pick him up and ride him on my back because I'm going to be old or something's going to happen. And it just wasn't like that at all. It just, I thought, made me a better parent, again, with the age and everything. But it was fantastic. He very much had a personality similar to mine, which is laid back. And I'm watching him come into his own. I think as a father, my biggest mission was to make sure that he was protected from outside influences and had balance of them. Because, I mean, sometimes people are giving you constructive criticism. There are other times when people are just criticizing, So I just wanted to make sure that he could balance everything that was happening around him to give him a chance to just be healthy and whole and have a great life.
Yeah, very well said, Kenny. One thing I talk about on my show all the time is the fatherless crisis that we have going on. We got so
Yeah,
many kids growing up without a father or a
yeah.
father figure in their life, and it really has a devastating effect on our society. And I know you went through a co-parenting situation. I know
Yeah.
one of the reasons for this, a lot of people point to a difficult relationship. Sometimes the family court system could be just horrifying to dads. But
Mhm.
what was your co-parenting situation experience like for you, and what kind of advice you have for the dad out there who's maybe just on the onset of a co-parenting experience?
You know, it's interesting because I talked to several fathers who did not understand that when they had children that they had equal rights, and just like the mom. And I fortunately was surrounded by people who were knowledgeable about uh, the court system and the whole separation uh, situation. Oh, you know, those things that happen in that. Things were fairly easy. They were fairly easy because I never wanted to have sole custody and take him away from his mom. I think that kids need the balance, and vice versa. His mother never tried to take him from me or what have you. But my son, uh, I think, really just needed to see us positive, not speaking negatively about one another. That's another thing that happens a lot in divorces and separations is you have a parent telling a child a little too much and they can't handle it. So that did not happen from this end. I did not try to explain too much to him either. And interesting enough, when I was getting ready to get married again, my son came to affirm me one day because I had some men affirming me before I got married. He said, "Thank you for not telling me everything and shielding me from some things. I didn't understand it then." And I know we had some times where he was really angry at me because he thought, "Oh, I'm old enough now. I'm 8, you know, and you can tell me everything." And I'm like, "No, no, son, you know, it's okay. Just know that you're loved and cherished, and let's keep it moving." But for most of the men out there, just know that don't allow your emotions and your situation to be dumped on the child. Don't allow the child to be in the middle of anything. And if you can, I mean, I don't want to sound preachy because I know everybody's situation is very different. If you really research my situation, it was very, very difficult because we had some other things publicly going on. But for guys, just know that you're not counted out, the dad. You're not a second thought. You have the same types of rights. Just keep yourself focused and as a great example for your child.
Yeah, very well said, Kenny. And I agree with you there too. And I would imagine being in the spotlight and having that on you as well makes it even all the more difficult. But
Sure.
I think kids today become so desensitized to so many things that are going on because they're
Yeah.
exposed to they have too
So
much
much.
information too
Absolutely.
soon. So I love what you have to say there. Now, did becoming a father, did that change you at all as far as an artist goes? Did that maybe change the way that you do your music? Did it have any effect on your career whatsoever as a
Yeah.
recording artist?
You know, I was always lyric conscious, if you will, but I think it did make me more lyric conscious. It's like, well, when I sing this song, my son's going to hear it. Is he going to try to live out what I'm saying? Is he going to try to emulate the lyrics that I sing in the song? I think it more or less reinforced the path that I was already on. Because my mother made me very conscious of lyrics, and she would always be like, "Does this song have value?" And again, I came from the church, so with gospel music and things like that, there's a huge lyric consciousness about singing songs of faith and inspiring people. And I was like, "Well, how do I do that?" And people want me to be a sex symbol, and they want me to be all this other stuff, you know. So it was balancing all of that was always important from the beginning. So I think in having a child, I just continued on that same path and just continued to build.
Yeah, very cool. What would you consider to be some of the top values that maybe you got from your father that you hope to instill in your son as he was growing up?
Wow, for me, gosh, not to take things too seriously, to explore. My dad was always like, go out and try everything, you know, no boundaries. And as a result, I've been singing several different genres, even in my show. I go out and I put all of the things I've learned vocally into like a storytelling portion of my show so that I can show people that not having boundaries like that or limits is freeing. And it's one of those situations where when you allow yourself to expand out, you never know how far the mind can go and how many things you can learn. There's just no limits on the learning of a human being.
Yeah, great stuff. And I know you mentioned here too. I know you got a new album, Here to Stay. I know
Here
you
to
dropped a
Stay.
single recently. What can the audience expect to hear when they get the new album?
Here to Stay is a fairly contemporary R&B album. It is a showcase. Interesting when we talk about fathering. For me, fathering extends even past my son. It extends over to other young men who are coming up, who need information, who are without guidance in certain areas of their lives. So I tried to extend my knowledge about the music industry to other young producers. So this particular album is a showcase of a producer named Drakar Madison Wesley. His stage name is Madison as an artist. And so the album is one that touches on the legacy of my music, but at the same time takes me into the new relevant sound right now of R&B music. So he just needed, that kind of fatherly guidance, and I've done that all my life as well. I've taken on mentees through the years and just tried to guide them towards their own greatness. So that the album showcases that, and it also showcases Here to Stay, my commitment to singing the love songs, the love ballads.
Well, sounds exciting. And yeah, very important to be, like you said, offering that service to mentees. I know there's so many kids out there, like I mentioned before, growing up without a father or father
Yes.
figure. So it's awesome to be able to do that. And just on what you do, I know that the way that we consume music has changed drastically since when you first began your career here. So what kind of advice do you have for the parent out there whose kid is interested in pursuing a music career? What's the best way to do it today? Is it putting out a YouTube video? Is it being your own? Is it going to the traditional record label? What's the best route for these young artists to take today?
You know what I think is it's all of those things. It's taking advantage of every opportunity that comes to you, because everybody has a different story about how they made it in this industry. There's no real one path. It's a lot about relationships. But when you don't have those relationships readily at your fingertips, the great thing is we have this technology with the internet that you can put out your own music. I just try to instill in kids that want to do this to just love it all the way, because the business of music is not always kind. Becoming famous is not always a kind situation. You put yourself in a vulnerable place where people get to say things and have access to you that's unusual. And a lot of people discount those things, but those are the things that happen more in the long term. So I try to tell everyone, love it like if you never got paid to do it, that you would still do it. And it keeps you in a place of gratitude. So, there are mornings, if I'm not feeling great, I could get up and I can sing a song. And it has the same value as if I sold a CD or something to that degree. Because I know we a lot of times validate ourselves by what other people think and by money and sales and things. But sometimes you have to just validate yourself based on you knowing you, being a great person. And if that is at your foundation, really, you can go into any aspect of entertainment or the business. And I think you can survive. But a lot of times we lose ourselves in the pursuit of success in the music industry. And that's what I try to teach kids. Don't allow yourself to be lost in that.
Even more so difficult with the social media that we have today, and everybody getting criticism from all over the place.
The place.
Yeah, I think that definitely adds a layer to it. But to your point there, too, I think with sports and with entertainment, you can't really teach passion or you can't teach heart.
That's right.
I think that's the big determining factor in how far that may go.
Absolutely.
And then just bringing it back into you as a dad here, what about as far as discipline goes? What type of disciplinarian were you as a dad with your son growing up? And is that different than the discipline style you grew up with?
No, I grew up with the spankings, the old-fashioned spankings, the whoopings. But I didn't get a lot of that. I think that what happens is if you discipline a child early, there's certain things that they just get. There are times when I used to, and I did, again, I grew up with the spankings. I did spank my child early. And when I say spankings, I don't mean something abusive, but if he was going towards a fire, I wasn't going to sit there and go, KJ, come back, KJ, come back. I'd be like, no, that's not for you. That's what I would say to him initially. In order for him to actually get a spanking, which is a tap or anything like that, it's almost like tapping somebody on the shoulder. He would have to do something that completely defied me, that I knew would not be beneficial to him. I think we've gotten so far away from the whole spanking thing because is it humane? Is it the correct thing to do? And I think that as we transition, because that's what we're really in a transition with all of that, because we have generations who go outside and pick a switch for you to be. I mean, that's the generation that my father came from. And then when it got to me, it was, no, you're not going to do that, but you're going to get a spanking or punishments where we would have to write, I won't forget to do this, or I won't. I mean, there's so many things that we had to do. And then we get to my son's generation where we're talking to him. And there was a time when my father and my son and I lived in the same house. We lived together for about 6 to 8 years. And during that time period, it was really interesting because my father would be like, whoa, that boy disrespects you. The generation is like, because he talks back. But in our society now, our kids, we allow them a voice, where in my father's generation, kids did not have a voice at all. So balancing it all was very interesting. Again, in terms of the literal discipline, physically, a lot of that stuff, very, very little when he was young as a shocker. And it's like, oh my God, my dad is the authoritarian. And my dad, he did something that just shocked me. When that goes off in the beginning, it's like, okay, kids understand. But I didn't have to do much. After 6 years old, 7, 8, I mean, I could talk to him and I could say, hey, this is not for you. This is not what you need to be doing here, or go sit here or do that. And he's going to do it because he has a fear of God in him about me. And it's not because I beat him down, you know what I'm saying? But there's certain things that you kind of shock him. That's what I did back in the day, whether that's right or wrong. That was my combination of coming from the generation of my dad to the new generation, how I handled it.
Yeah, and my father was 50 years old when he had me. He was born in 1930. So, I mean,
wow.
He came from that old school generation of that
God.
as well, where children should be seen and not heard.
And not heard. Yeah.
And I think, so many of the dads that I've interviewed on here, when I ask them that discipline question, almost all of them say, oh, I grew up with the spanking or the switch or the spoon or the belt. And then it's, well, I don't do that with my kids. And I don't know. I think because so many people are afraid, and there's obviously a major difference between spanking a child and beating a child.
Absolutely.
And I think some of it is, now I said I have 4 kids. Now, spanking worked with some, wouldn't work with others. There was no need to. So it's like each kid needs to be disciplined in a different way.
They're very different.
Yeah, and I think there's definitely that. I grew up with that as well, like wait till your father comes home type of deal.
Right.
That was enough to straighten me right up,
Right.
And I think if kids don't have that, I think it leads definitely into some more trouble.
Yeah, it's like you spare the rod. I'm a Bible guy. You spare the rod, you hate your son. Some people say you spoil your son. I think it's both. But sparing the rod, we have to define what the rod is and make sure that it's not abusive. But we have to make sure that we're doing the right thing, because later on, you can create battles with your kids that shouldn't exist. Power battles, because it's like, oh, there's no consequence. If you have a dog, it's the same thing. We love dogs. We have a little puppy here. And there's certain things that we have to do. I don't hit him or anything like that, but we have to do things to guide him and pull him back on the rein, pull him back. Or he feels like, hey, I can do whatever I want and I can take over and I can do, because there's some people that probably are like, don't put a leash on him, because there's so many extremes in our society, and everybody trying to tell you what's right and what's wrong. But I love what you just said. We have to look at the individual and figure out what is it that particular child needs, because they may need something different than the next child.
Yeah, that's why one of the things I suggest to a lot of the parents, especially I've done it myself, is the 5 love languages.
Oh,
by
wow, that's
Chapman. And I
nice.
know that that's
Yes.
usually a thing that they suggest for like a husband and wife or boyfriend
Yeah.
and girlfriend. But I found it so useful for my kids to do it with my teenage boys to kind of get
Yeah.
an insight into their love language and how they give
Absolutely.
and receive love. So that was very beneficial as well.
That's
Uh,
great.
but
Yeah, I love
but
that
like
book.
I said, I've interviewed so many of these guys that have come from that generation of discipline, and they all turned out highly successful. So I
Yeah.
mean, it wasn't like it totally ruined their life. So
Right.
there's definitely something to it. Well, we obviously got the new album Here to Stay out now. What kind of goals or plans do you have here for yourself for the future? What's next for you?
Oh man, I'm ready to hit the road. The COVID and the quarantine stuff has really separated us from our fan base and the whole live music scene. But that is back, and I'm excited about it. So I want to hit the road at the top of the year and get to see as many of the fans as possible and bring them the live show.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm going to drop the link to your website in the description of today's podcast episode. So my listeners can go over there, check out the album, check out the shows,
Yeah,
and all that. Last thing I want to hit you with here, I'd love to ask all the dads that I get on the podcast, what
sure.
type of advice do you have for that new dad or for that about to be father who's out there listening?
Wow. The new dad or about to be dad, I would say, don't think that things have to be perfect, or that everything has to, line up to be like, well, we know that doesn't have to be what your parents do. A lot of times, whatever we didn't like from our parents, we take an opposite approach and we're like, I'll never, like you mentioned, I'll never do that to my kids. Or I didn't ever get this, so I'm going to give all of this to my son or my daughter. But try not to move in extremes, and try not to compare yourself or beat yourself up about the things that you don't know, because it's going to be a learning and an unfolding experience every single day. But take in the amazing moments of seeing the child grow. You're going to learn things about yourself more than anything else. I would look at my son and be like, oh my God, did he just say something that I said when I was his age? And there's no way for him to know it. Genetics, DNA, spirit, generation, whatever you call it, that is in these children that allows them to be a piece of you. You watch that unfold. It is absolutely fascinating. It is a miracle in life. And so just enjoy the process. Don't be too hard on yourself.
Yeah,
That would be
very
it.
well said. Yeah, very well said. I love the message. This has been an honor for me. I got to say, Kenny Lattimore,
Thank
you're
you.
first class father all the way. And thank you so much for giving me a few minutes of your time here on First Class
Thank you.
Fatherhood.
I appreciate it.